Yeah, at a certain point, especially when you're done with grad school, like I
Yeah.
feel like the mentality is like, dude, get me out. Get me out. Get me out of here.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Basically Doctors. Today we are in the same room recording for the first time ever. Anna, what do you have to say about that?
I am really excited because I think this is what we would have, probably liked to do with
It's
our
true.
podcast, but we
Mhm.
never get to do. So, and honestly, as I talked about before, like this
Yeah,
is turning out to be much more challenging to do in person with you than it is apart because
it really is.
we've done a little bit of optimization of the
Mhm.
procedure
Yes,
apart,
it's
and
true.
now together it's a whole new can of worms. So let's see how this turns out.
Another ball game.
Another-
And, Anna and I have talked about a couple topics that we wanted to talk about today, and I'm actually going to come completely out of left field right now, and I'm going to change the topic because I think it's important. So, Anna, today I think that we should talk about your story.
Oh my god.
Because the last episode that we posted was my story. Because my story was long and arduous, and yours was also arduous.
Well, I think we got some feedback, and I think some people mentioned they wanted to hear some more about my story, and that's cool. Some
Yeah.
listeners, some of you.
So we have beta testers, and what I'll say is that we planned for the previous episode, which you maybe have listened to already, to be both of our stories, but I talked for so long that Anna tried to make hers as short as possible. And so I've cut her part of that story, and we're going to instead talk about her today. When we started filming this podcast was back in February, like we talked about last time.
Mhm. This
And
is true.
let's hear where you were at mentally and emotionally in February. Do you want to talk about the road trip that you took to Yale, or is that
I mean, I guess like if we're just gonna do like a brief life update, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I would say that after graduating, I decided to move to the East Coast from the West Coast because that's ultimately where my boyfriend and I got our jobs, and I was going to start a postdoc in Connecticut at Yale.
You started your postdoc. Do you want to talk about what you were doing at all? Is that interesting to you?
I think it was really interesting. I feel like they always say, I'm sure you felt the same way when you were selecting your postdoc, that
Mhm.
like you want to essentially pick a research area that you didn't get to really dive into during your graduate studies. And so for me, my postdoc, I think, was selected well from
Yeah,
that criteria. I was
definitely.
definitely working on science that was new and inspiring and like had um, ramifications, right? Like
Mhm.
there was a biological application for some of the work I was doing, which
Mhm.
was really rewarding as well.
Yes.
I know you did something similar in your postdoc. So
Mhm.
I really enjoyed my overall research time during my postdoc, and I got to learn a lot of new skills and talk with people outside of
Mhm.
my discipline as well. So that was really, really exciting.
Yes.
Yeah. And I was honestly just like thrilled. My mindset at that point is, and this is how I always am, is like when I know there's a huge hurdle that I need to get
Mhm.
over, I'm always like, as soon as I'm on the other side, I'll be okay. And that's like
Yes.
the only thing that keeps me going because yes, the 7 days in the RV, I was like bracing myself for like the month leading up to that trip because I knew it was going to be hard. And like in addition to just the RV, just the fact that I was moving
Yeah.
and like getting all my stuff across the country was going to be challenging. I had to ship my car. There was a lot of anxiety. So I was like, I just need to get on the other side of that anxiety
Yeah.
and I'll be okay.
Yeah.
So once I was overall on the other side of things and everything was moved in, I felt really, really good
Mhm.
because it's a new chapter.
Yes.
That was really cool.
Mhm.
I kind of a blank slate, if
Yes.
you will.
Yes.
Super nice. Nobody knows who you are because you haven't messed up yet. And you just get to kind of like be like
Yeah.
you take a little bit of stock of all of the stuff you learned from your previous experience, and you're like, I'm really excited to apply all of this here.
Yes. And like I feel like towards the end because of like, COVID and everything and breaking your leg, which we've talked about, all of those things. Like there were so many things that were obstacles in your PhD, and I feel like it was a good time that you could start something new where like, you didn't have all these things hanging over your head anymore. There wasn't the carrot was gone, right? You were
Totally.
just doing your postdoc.
Yeah.
Now, here's my next question, actually.
Mhm.
So, first, I want you to this is a two-parter. 1, when you were in grad school, what did you think you wanted to do with your life? 2, why did you decide to do a postdoc? Combined question.
That's okay, those are 2. Okay, I'm gonna try and do one and then the other, but
Okay.
basically, when I first got to grad school, I wanted to go into industry. I'm
Mhm.
pretty sure I wanted to go into
You did.
industry.
She did.
And I mean, I feel like it's rare to meet anybody
Mhm.
who's, like, 100% down, like,
Mhm.
set with that because you're so young
Mhm.
when you first start. I felt really brand
Mhm.
new, kind of inexperienced in my first year.
Mhm.
So I knew that ultimately working in pharma would be really awesome as an
Mhm.
industry topic, especially because I'm interested in medicine and I'm
Yeah.
interested in like kind of how chemicals affect your biology. But at the same time, I was like, well, I'm here to also learn what I'm good
What yeah.
at.
Mhm.
Right. That's like what part of grad school is too,
Right.
where it's like a period of self discovery. So I was like, I was
Mhm.
open
Right.
to discovering new parts and new talents that I potentially might have.
Mhm.
Um, Over time, in grad school, it kind of just several experiences just kind of helped solidify the fact
Mhm.
that like industry was probably going to be a better fit for me.
Mhm.
And I basically started looking for industry jobs like as a first resort
Mhm.
during like the year essentially that I was preparing to leave graduate
Right.
school.
I wanna interject.
Of course,
I swear, I don't know if your memory is just failing you,
absolutely. And
but,
it
like,
is. And it is.
so I think we've made this semi-clear throughout the podcast that we've released that, my memory is very annoying because I have a weirdly good memory, and
It's
Anna
true.
does not remember anything.
I don't.
So, I actually have a vivid memory of us talking about this, like, probably 1st or 2nd year, and you were talking to a professor who gave you a book to read because you wanted to do process because you cared more about like
Oh.
physorg. Or no, what the book was that how physorg applies to physical organic chemistry is what physorg is, but how that applies to process chemistry because you thought you weren't sure whether you would be able to apply the principles of physical organic chemistry. You never in my entire life have I heard you say you wanted to do med chem until you were a postdoc. It was wild to me that you decided you wanted to do med chem. I thought you would have done
Yeah, I mean,
process.
I guess I would just wanna clarify, I didn't necessarily know a distinction between process and med chem
Oh, okay,
when I
okay,
first started.
okay.
So, when I say I
Yeah.
had an interest in pharma, I
Uh-huh.
didn't necessarily mean I wanted specifically to do med chem. I was ultimately interested in pharma because I liked the connection that working in pharma would have with, like, you know, human impact,
Yes.
biological impact,
Mhm.
health impact.
Okay, okay,
Like, that was really cool to me,
okay.
but it didn't necessarily have to be in med chem or
Mhm.
process. I
Right.
actually didn't really know about those 2, like, sectors
Yeah.
of chemistry in,
Mhm.
pharma until, like, much later, and so I
Yeah,
started talking to more people who are working there.
yeah.
And that whole part about the process chemistry is I was particularly interested in physical organic chemistry as a subject or like
Mhm.
a sub-subject of
Mhm.
chemistry. And I thought that was such a cool subject and I wanted to keep utilizing that kind of, ability and skill in whatever I did later on. So when I asked, people about how applied that would be in
Mhm.
industry, a lot of people said that physical organic chemistry was really, really valued in
Mhm.
process chemistry
Right.
specifically, which I do agree with,
Yeah.
although I do use it in med chem as well
Sure,
now.
yeah.
So it's not a hard and fast rule,
Mhm.
but that's why I was looking into process
Right.
chemistry.
Okay.
It's kind of like a chicken or the egg thing because
Mhm.
my background was in methods in
Right.
undergrad as well.
Mhm.
So and I hadn't necessarily, even in graduate school, done projects outside of that, which was
Yeah.
something that I really lamented. And relating it back to why I decided to do a postdoc,
Mhm.
it was kind of nice that I was able to do something different than
Right.
methodology in my postdoc for this exact reason.
Yes.
I was super scared in
Mhm.
my first year of going into a methodology lab
Mhm.
because I didn't think that would give me a diverse
Yeah.
skill set.
Mhm.
I felt like it would kind of pigeonhole me into
Mhm.
doing one particular thing. So when you do methodology for our line of work, that usually means for a lot of people that you might go into process chemistry
Mhm.
because ultimately process chemists probably utilize methodology, principles and skills a little bit more. That's what
Mhm.
they say. In
Well,
reality, it's kind of like
it's
a skill is a skill is a skill.
right. For anybody who's not a chemist or is not an organic chemist, method development is basically all you're doing is you're trying to optimize a new reaction to create a new basically a new class of molecules or a new bond. Like, it's just adding to the chemical toolbox is, like, how we like to describe it. Do you think that's a good description of it?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
I think so.
Whereas the other options could be doing like total synthesis, where you're trying to target a specific molecule instead of targeting a specific reaction. You're using a bunch of different reactions to make a specific molecule, which is, another thing that you can do with organic chemistry. But anyway, so that's methods, total synthesis. Anyway, keep going.
So as I said, it was kind of like chicken or the egg
Mhm.
because if you start off doing methods,
Mhm.
it's very likely you'll continue to do methods, or if you
Mhm.
start off doing like any area of expertise in your
Mhm.
research, the chances are you're probably going to continue it,
Mhm.
right? Because most of the time people like that you have previous experience in something and
Mhm.
in, either hiring you or allowing you to join their research projects,
Mhm.
which makes diversification kind of really challenging.
Mhm.
I would say that, like, in grad school, I certainly tried to rotate in a lot of different labs that
Mhm.
did different things than what I did in my undergrad, and
Mhm.
unfortunately, that didn't always pan out for
Right.
one reason or another, and part of it has to do with, like, my undergraduate skill set,
Mhm.
setting me up for a methodology lab in grad
Mhm.
school.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I felt like I was kind of being led towards process. I
Yeah.
really felt like I was unprepared
Yes.
for, understanding what career options were in front of
Mhm.
me. I don't know why, but
Mhm.
part of it is also a lot of the career discussion and the
Mhm.
career seminars are actually done in your first year or first 2 years,
Mhm.
and that's not always helpful for you
Yeah.
because when in your first 2 years, you're so overwhelmed with just getting adjusted, teaching classes, joining a lab and stuff that,
Mhm.
like, and the prospect of looking for a job is so far away because
Yeah.
it's gonna be, like, 4 or
5
5 years
years.
later
Yeah.
that, you're not really paying attention to all of that, and you're not
Mhm.
thinking about all of that,
Yeah.
and, like, you can change a lot in 4 to 5 years, right? So, I think that if I had gotten some career training
Mhm.
later on,
Yeah.
that would have been really helpful.
Yes.
Um, but so that's I think that answered your first
Yeah.
question of, like, what did I wanna do, and did I
Mhm.
know what I wanna do? The answer is really no, I only knew kind of
Mhm.
maybe private versus public.
Right.
I had a kind of a vague idea of all of that. I was even open to working in government, if I'm gonna be perfectly honest with you, like the
What do you mean?
CDC or the NIH, like,
Oh.
or something like that, I'd be open to potentially pursuing jobs like that, but again, I don't necessarily feel like I know enough about those occupations.
When in grad school?
Yeah.
Interesting. That's funny because in my postdoc, I was looking into working for the state too. Remember
Oh,
that?
yeah. I mean, at a
Yeah.
certain point, especially when you're done with grad school, like, I
Yeah.
feel like the mentality is like, "Dude, get me out.
I
Get me out. Get me out of
outta
here.
here.
Get me out of here." And
Yeah.
if it's a government job,
Yeah.
if it's a industry job, who cares?
Just out. I need
Get me
out. I
out.
need out. Yeah.
Stop the simulation. Get me out. So, like,
Yeah.
I really, really feel like I was really open. And then I narrowed things when I got into my postdoc, which I'll talk a little bit
Yeah.
about. So I didn't necessarily always want to do a postdoc,
Yeah.
obviously, because and here's the thing. I do not think that there are very clear instructions
Mhm.
or roadmaps for getting to certain careers. And I
Mhm.
was constantly being presented with conflicting pieces of information.
Really?
Yes.
Okay, please elaborate.
To elaborate, it was like I hear all the time,
Okay.
just colloquially, and
Mhm.
actually you can Google articles that actually have this exact title. Postdocs are bad for industry.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes. Yes.
Postdoc do not do a postdoc if you wanna go into industry.
Uh-huh.
That's just that's like the worst career killing move that you could make, which obviously is not
Uh-huh.
true,
Right.
right? Like, both you and I can say that. It's just not
Yeah.
true. I mean, I don't personally think it's true. I don't even think at least in my field. I don't know
Yeah.
other people's fields. Take this with a grain of salt, but, like, that was a huge conflicting piece of evidence
Mhm.
because not evidence, but conflicting piece of information.
Yeah.
I would see articles, I would
Mhm.
see tweets, um, I would see a variety of different I would hear this from people. At the same time, I
Mhm.
would constantly also hear, from people who are in industry as well as outside in academia that did tell me that
Mhm.
plenty of postdocs or people who do postdocs
Mhm.
get industry jobs.
Yeah.
So basically I felt like when I was talking to people from industry and in academia, I didn't get the sense that having a postdoc was going to hurt me from some people. And in fact, I can tell people that when I interviewed at companies for a position, no one ever really took my postdoc and said, "Oh, this is bad." In fact, like I would say that's a lot of people, they asked me why I did a postdoc
Mhm.
because they were curious. A lot of because I think people are under the impression that a lot of people wouldn't want to take the time to do a postdoc. It was never like, "Oh, you did a postdoc. That's
Right.
kind of suspicious," or "That's
Yeah.
we're going to mark against you because you did that." They liked the fact that I did a postdoc
Mhm.
and that I did something different during my postdoc. I think that
Yes.
added value to my candidacy. So I would just like to offer that as a potential,
Yes.
um, input into whether or not people are going to choose whichever route. Like it's
Right.
not a dead end. I also just wasn't successful at finding a pharma job right off the bat. I wouldn't consider my first job hunt in grad school to be very successful. And I think this was not just because I felt like my resume was lacking, which it could have been, but it was also for me a big confidence thing. I felt like towards
Yeah.
the end of grad school, guys, like you are so it's that Taylor Swift lyric from All Too Well 10 Minutes where you're like, I'm a soldier. You know the lyrics.
I'm a soldier who's returning half her weight, that part.
Yeah.
See, what I think of a lot, like what the all too well 10-minute version Taylor Swift lyric that I relate to my postdoc was, "I'd like to be my old self again, but I'm still trying to find it."
Oh, okay,
I
yeah.
literally said that. I was sobbing and I was like,
Oh
"Joe,
my
I
god.
just wanna find my old self."
The trauma
Yeah,
is real when Taylor Swift songs don't remind you of your ex relationships, but instead they remind you of grad
graduate
school.
school. Yeah.
So, yeah, I would say I'm a soldier returning half their
Her weight,
weight
yeah.
is like really I that's how I felt in grad school. Like I not to minimize actual soldiers out there, like
Well,
but I felt so weary. I felt so beaten down because you're so tired. If you
yeah.
think, like, grad school is a marathon, like, that's the last leg of your marathon. You've just run
Mhm.
however many miles. You're, like, you feel like you're just about to
Well,
give out?
I wanna kind of elaborate, not to, like, go into a deep dive analysis of Taylor Swift lyrics, but, like, really quick. Because when I hear
Mhm.
that lyric in context from "When your Brooklyn broke my skin and bones, I'm a soldier who's returning half her weight," right?
Yeah. Mhm.
So, I guess that makes sense, but I always kind of thought about it like she's returning half her weight in the sense that so in this is so annoying, we may or may not include this, but I'm an Evermore girly. I'm a Taylor Swift stan, you probably know this, but, in Evermore I cannot remember what song it is off the top of my head, but I'm not gonna waste time thinking about it, but she goes, "I gain the weight of you and lose it," and so when I think about that line, it was, "I'm returning half my weight because I lost him."
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
That's fun. That's
Yeah, but
fun.
so that's why I was confused relating, but I can see what you mean with,
Yeah.
like
Yeah, because you see, the
yeah,
thing is you're interpreting it
yeah.
like you're some psycho Taylor Swift fan that thinks all of her songs are
They
connected,
are.
and I'm interpreting it as a normal human being.
Okay, so
Anyway, no, I'm just kidding. When I say psycho, I really mean it in the best possible loving
yeah,
way. But, yeah, I did not interpret it that way, but that's because I don't listen to all of her discography, and
yeah,
I interpret it for me, it was like, "Oh, yeah, 'cause, you go to the army and stuff, and you go through so much, and you, like" or sorry, if you go through war and whatever, you go through so much that you return literally, like,
half your weight.
decimated, like,
That's
just
yeah,
dilapidated.
dilapidated.
The um
Half your weight, if
Half
you
your
will.
weight. So that's that anyway, so that's kinda how I interpreted it. I'm gonna just quickly go back to my mindset.
Right.
like, part of the reason why I feel like my first job search during graduate school didn't go well is a confidence thing and also an endurance thing,
Mhm.
stamina. Like, you're already doing everything you can and putting all of your last efforts into finishing your degree, and so simultaneously trying to find a job and go through the job hunt, like,
Mhm.
that's a very overwhelming experience for
Yeah.
most people. I'm sure most people could relate, to this. Some people might get lucky and get, a job, lined up, relatively early, and that's cool, great. But I think that for me and for a lot of people who I know, you send like maybe like 40 applications
Mhm.
out, and you just don't hear back from anything. Like that can
Mhm.
just really
Well,
mess with you.
I mean, I think when you applied the O2,
Mhm.
like, there was a boom in hiring
Right.
right, like, in the 9 months before you started applying, or, like, the
Yeah,
year
sure.
before, so there was a huge boom, and then there was talk of recession and stuff. So and there's like, layoffs started in, like, I think, like, when you started your postdoc, basically. So because remember, I mean, our friend got laid off, like, there were a bunch of layoffs going on already, so
I don't know how
uh-huh.
conscious I
Mhm.
was of that,
Yeah.
because I'm sure that
Yeah.
was the case.
Yeah.
I don't know how much I was thinking of that because, and I'll get into this another time of like kind of job markets and like
Right.
understanding the job market, because I find that that is not something that I can very easily grasp. And so I don't know how much attention I paid to that. I know that there were a lot of job openings. I don't know how the hiring was, and I don't know what degree, like what
Mhm.
percentage of applicants were getting hired at the time.
Yeah.
Um, I think that I was kind of naive about the process because
Mhm.
I was cold applying most places because my network wasn't that big either. If I were to be perfectly honest with you, like a
Sure.
lot of
Mhm.
people that I was like really close with, I don't necessarily know if they were stable enough in their jobs yet,
Mhm.
also timing wise, to really like help me.
Yeah.
So either way, I applied to postdocs as kind of
Mhm.
a backup
Right.
because it's always really important to have a backup. And I always knew that in my head, I was, like, worried that a postdoc would hurt me, but
Mhm.
I was like, logically, I was like, even though I'm reading about this and hearing about this, like, that just doesn't make sense to me logically, and when
Yeah.
something doesn't make sense to me,
You don't care. She said, no. Can't be right."
it's just something that I ca if something doesn't make sense to me, I can't do it.
Yeah.
I cannot do it. Like, you can't tell me
Mhm.
something and just expect me to follow
Mhm.
the rules. If the rules don't make sense to
Yes.
me,
Yeah.
I'm just not gonna
She's
follow
out.
them.
She's not gonna do it.
I'm outie, and that has
Yeah.
hurt me.
True.
And that's also helped me.
Yeah, but I will also say in context of all of this, we also had friends. We had one friend who did a postdoc that launched them into getting the job that they wanted.
Right, for
And
sure.
then we had another friend who wished they had done a postdoc because instead they had taken a, like, lower tier job than honestly their skill set. I think they were way overqualified for that job is what I'm trying to say. But then by doing that job, they were able to jump to the job they wanted after a couple of years. So what they told me, because I was talking to him about it when I was applying for postdocs, that he said he wished he had done a postdoc instead of doing that kind of shitty job.
Yeah, I think that those examples were really
Mhm.
informative as well, and
Yeah.
that gave me a lot of confidence
Mhm.
because ultimately, like, I just want everyone to know that the job market was good enough that everybody could get a job. It's not like people couldn't get a job, period. When you're
When?
talking about getting a job, when
Okay.
I was looking, I felt like everybody can get a job.
Mhm.
It's always relative though, because it may or may not be the job that you want,
Yeah. In the location you want.
in the location that you want,
Yeah.
in the company that you want,
Mhm.
with the people that you like.
In the position you want.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, like, because I don't wanna diminish the value of our degree, like, it wasn't like there was a vacuum of,
Mhm.
how do I say this? It wasn't like there was an incredible shortage
Mhm.
of positions for PhD level scientists.
Right.
I wouldn't say that. I would
Yeah.
say that we had options, and
Mhm.
it's just not all of the options were created equal, right? Like,
Right.
they're
Yeah.
just not. So
Yeah.
for me, it was like, do I go to a industry job or
Mhm.
go into the private sector, whatever you want to call it, and take a job that maybe I wasn't very enthusiastic about,
Mhm.
or do I do a postdoc
Right.
and take the pay cut, but I'll be doing something that I would be interested in,
Right.
and I'll be learning a new skill, and it may or may not make me a better candidate to apply in the future.
Right.
So that was the decision I was facing.
Right.
And I, applied to a few industry places.
Mhm.
I got a couple of interviews.
Mhm.
I really bombed an interview.
Mhm.
And I also applied to postdocs as a backup. And thankfully, I was offered a postdoc at Yale, which I ended up taking.
Mhm.
Could I have spent a couple more months looking for a job in industry? Yeah, and
Mhm.
maybe things would have worked out.
Yeah.
Um, Actually, funnily enough, I guess I did get a couple of interviews, and one of the interviews they wanted to schedule after they essentially got back to me and they wanted me to interview basically a week after I'd gotten an offer from a
Yeah.
postdoc position.
Mhm.
So I was like trying to pick between, do I like say no to the postdoc
Mhm.
and do the interview?
Right.
If you do the interview, there's no guarantee that like
Mhm.
after the interview you get the position, whereas
Yeah.
like the postdoc that was offered to me was like a sure thing.
Right.
So with that decision ahead of me, I was like, okay, I picked the postdoc
Right.
just because I knew it would be a job,
Yeah.
at the end of the day. But that's kind of the way the cookie crumbled for me. And um, again, I wouldn't have taken the postdoc if I wasn't excited about the
Yeah,
science.
exactly.
So,
And Yale.
yeah, I was excited about yeah, well, here's the thing. The other thing about doing a postdoc is you really wanna, like, obviously spend your time working with people that you've always wanted to work for, people that
Mhm.
you are really excited about and that you've been, like, admiring throughout your
Mhm.
entire graduate career. Like,
Mhm.
that's ideal because, maybe those are people that you didn't get to work with in
Yeah.
grad school, right? And postdocs, I will say, were at the time short supply because
Yeah.
the industrial sector was thriving. So a lot of
Yeah.
people were able to get industry jobs or wanted
Mhm.
to go into industry because there were so many positions. And
Yeah.
as a result, there weren't a lot of people who were looking into postdocs.
Yeah. I feel like it was that your timing was right on the cusp of, and I'm not saying this to like I'm not just trying to support you, but based on my understanding from
Okay.
people who are looking for jobs, like there was a boom. Like you're right, there was a boom and it resulted in a postdoc shortage, which made it so yes, there were a lot of postdocs available, but at the time that you were applying, it was when the job market started fizzling out, but the postdocs were still available. Is how I feel
Yeah.
about
I mean, I'm not going to get into an argument with you about it,
it.
although I
Okay.
will argue with you because I guess this is the point of the podcast. But
Right.
like, the job market
Uh-huh.
boomed as a result for our industry as a result of, the pandemic actually,
Right.
right? Because there was a lot more money going into pharma
Mhm.
because pharma was the one that was developing all of the new treatments and
Right.
vaccines for, COVID.
Mhm.
Now, the thing is, even while things were going like, it hit an apex and
Uh-huh.
it was on the decline
Yeah.
for sure, but that decline was still higher than pre-pandemic era
Ye
job levels. It
Oh, I guess that's
100%.
fair, huh? Okay,
Because
okay,
and
fair,
it still
fair.
is.
Yeah.
And really, even today, it
Mhm.
still is. Even
Yeah.
with companies doing layoffs and hiring
Mhm.
freezes, I think the job outlook post-pandemic
Mhm.
for our level of expertise in other
Mhm.
STEM-related fields, I think it's actually better than it was pre-pandemic.
2019 was brutal.
It was a brutal time.
Yeah, from the people that we were talking to. Yeah.
That was my perception, though.
Me
I don't
too,
have the
yeah.
hard data on it or anything
Yeah.
like that, but I do this is why, like, when people, um, got anxious
Mhm.
about the boom happening and then it going back down,
Mhm.
I really wasn't that anxious because I was like, "This is still a lot better." I really
Yeah.
expected things to
Mhm.
be really, really awful,
Yeah.
based off of previous experiences from pre-pandemic,
Mhm.
but even today, it's really not that it really isn't that bad. So
Okay.
that's my perception,
Yeah.
and I don't know, this could change depending on
Yeah. Who knows?
it can change depending on the area too, and, like, whether or not you're on the West Coast or East Coast, but
Yeah.
ultimately, I'm just gonna have to fight you on that.
That's fine, I accept that. I think that's probably fair. I don't have the data either,
Yeah.
but I just know that it was very good. It was very good for a minute, and then it was less good.
Yeah.
Because, like, I mean, yeah, there were people getting laid off. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Okay, so now that we've gotten our argument out of the way, you decided that you wanted to do a postdoc because it was a more of a sure thing, even though you were getting other interviews, the other things hadn't panned out. Now you decide to take the RV trip to your postdoc. You start your postdoc, and you were only there for a year.
I was. It was a very short postdoc.
It was,
And in
yeah.
some ways, it was the right length
Yeah.
of time for a
Mhm.
postdoc. Ideal, even, if
Yes.
anything. I didn't necessarily begin my postdoc with that intention. Like when
Mhm.
my PI asked me how long I would be interested in staying, I told
Mhm.
him I would be okay with staying for 2 years. I
Yeah.
definitely didn't want to stay more than 2 years, and I think we both had the right expectations or set the right expectations with one another.
Yeah.
He put me on a project that well, he let me start out on a project that somebody else was already leading and that had
Mhm.
some preliminary results for, and the ball was already rolling
Mhm.
because his priority was to get me a publication
Yeah.
as soon as possible. And I thought that that was a really good move
Yeah.
for him, like a good mentor move.
Mhm.
So that's what I ended up working on. And thankfully, that's coming out soon, which I really, really appreciate. And that is ultimately what also allowed me to
Mhm.
essentially finish things within a year.
Yeah.
If I was working on a project where I was starting something from scratch,
Mhm.
then yeah, in my line of work, it would probably take more than just a year to finish,
Yeah.
with no, other like help, because
Yeah.
research just takes a long time.
It sure does.
So I basically spent a year there. I worked to diversify essentially my skill set. And I also did a fair amount of networking as well. Like,
Yeah.
because, now you're in a different location. This is
Mhm.
why you really want to do your postdoc somewhere different. Like,
Yes.
maybe potentially far away with different people that you've never met before.
Yeah.
I was able to expand my network just because my advisor obviously had former students.
Yeah.
There were regular recruiters that went to Yale
Yeah.
that I was able to meet and talk about, and I just continue to do my thing and
Yeah.
network. More importantly, I think the postdoc, that 1 year gave me enough distance and time to recover from my grad
Mhm.
school because again, like, I was so tired, I was
Yeah.
so forlorn,
Yeah.
um, to really, like, stand back up again and build that
Yeah.
level of confidence.
Yeah, I think you definitely regained your confidence through your postdoc. Like, she was like almost like, I would say, rock bottom.
It was.
She was at the end of
It
PhD.
was. It taken everything from me.
It really had.
It
It
really did.
genuinely, it was a, this is like, I'm like dissociating thinking about it. But like, well, that's how I feel about my postdoc, but that's neither
That's
here nor there.
Yeah, I mean, like,
Yeah.
we started this podcast saying, like, grad school
Yeah.
took, like, what, took away our 20s?
Yeah, we lost our
We
20s to
lost
grad
our
school.
20s to grad school, and I would say, yeah, that's how I felt. I felt like, "Oh
Yeah.
my god, like, who am I?
Was
What am
she?
I?
What
Where
is
am
the
I?"
where am I? Dissociating. But
Yeah, so I would say that that was really key in that you need that time to recover, and I know I'm not the best, like, when you go to interviews,
mhm,
part of it is like, yeah, let my work speak for myself.
for itself.
Let my work speak for itself,
Uh-huh.
but also part of it
Mhm.
is you have to fight for your work.
You have to believe in yourself.
You have to believe in yourself.
Yeah.
Like, your work doesn't just speak for itself. I'm
Yeah.
sorry, it really doesn't, because who knows what, like, based off of your papers,
Yeah.
based off of, like, your resume, like, that doesn't really tell the interviewers much, right?
Yeah.
Otherwise, they wouldn't need to, like, meet with you.
And do presentations and stuff. Yeah.
Exactly. So, you know, once you get to an interview stage,
Mhm.
they wanna see, like, how you present, and
Yeah.
they wanna see how you evaluate and
Mhm.
communicate the work that you did. So if you can't do that confidently,
Yeah.
you've lost before you even started, right?
Yeah.
So I think that that was a really big lesson that I had to learn from my
Yeah.
first round of interviews that I was able to kind of work on throughout my postdoc,
Yeah.
regain confidence in what I did, and
Mhm.
then, I prepared a better
Yeah.
package, essentially.
Definitely. Well, and this, I mean, this doesn't need to, like, we're not gonna devolve this into a how to apply for jobs or anything, but,
No.
like, what I will say is that what's really interesting about interviewing in general
Mhm.
is because obviously I had to apply for my job that I have now, and I was going through the same thing, but it's the first couple are really stressful, And then you just get used to it. Like, you know how to answer all of these questions. You know how to do the outline that allows you to articulate the important aspects of your personality and work ethic and things like that. And it's scary to do it the first couple times, but as soon as you get used to it and you have that confidence, you can go into interviews and be like, yeah, this is me and you should hire me, right? Because I'm awesome. What?
I am 100%. No,
Yeah.
absolutely. That's
Yeah.
the attitude though. You
Yeah.
have to fake it till you make it
Yeah.
in situations like that.
Mhm.
So, basically my advisor and I discussed towards the end of my first year as a postdoc,
Mhm.
what I should do, whether or not I should renew. And
Mhm.
based off of the fact that I wanted to go into industry, he
Mhm.
was basically very supportive of me looking for jobs.
Yeah.
He was like, why extend this another
Yeah.
year? You will probably get a good job with what you have right now,
Right.
and you should just go for it. So
See
I
ya.
did.
Bye.
Yeah, and I was a little stressed again, to apply for jobs because of just thinking about
Yeah.
having to do that is stressful, but
Yeah.
I put my best foot forward. I had a much more successful
Yeah.
time in getting callbacks, getting,
Mhm.
feedback from people, and I did it.
She did it,
I did it.
and she got a
I got a
job.
job. And most importantly, as a shout out, my current job, I did have a connection, like a
Yeah.
a person who was willing to advocate for me
Yes.
and push my resume through,
Yeah.
and that was really, really helpful too. And it also made me feel more comfortable going into the company
Yeah.
because this person was already there,
Yeah.
and, I knew that I would have, like, that, connection right off the bat, which is
Yeah.
really, really nice too. So, those were all kind of what fed into me being here now.
Yeah.
And I didn't have to make a huge move like you did from,
Yeah.
um, California to the Netherlands, but,
Yeah.
I think I'm more or less settled. Do you like my apartment?
I do. She doesn't have any furniture, dude. I like we're on her bed.
Now we
The
are. I
only
don't have
other furniture is the air mattress that I'm sleeping on over there.
I ordered a couch. The thing is, like, I waited until Black Friday.
I know you did, which makes sense.
I know. I
But
know.
anyway, what do you think the moral of the story is?
I don't know. I think the moral of the story is times change.
You know what I think the moral of the story is? I think that's fine. What she said is fine. Okay, but let me tell you what I think. Here's my moral of the story. In context of your experience over the past couple of years, leaving your PhD, getting your postdoc. I think that the moral of the story is Anna was deterred from doing a postdoc because she had read that it would be a problem to get the job that she ultimately wanted.
This is true.
And what I genuinely believe, and this is a new experience for me because Anna's rubbing off on me. The people who are in academia are going to give you advice and they're going to tell you that you have to do this. And it's now or never. You do a postdoc, you apply for faculty positions, it's now or never. You apply for faculty positions one round. If you apply for the next round, it could look bad. But the thing is, you can do whatever you want and you can carve your own path. As long as you have people who support you and know your worth, even if you don't know your own worth, which is what I feel like your experience was, you can get to the places that you want to go without following this path that has already been paved in front of you. Like, for instance, they say don't do a postdoc before going into industry. Well, we know a professor that not only did a postdoc, but started a professorship and then left and
And went
works
into
in industry
industry.
now. So,
So, it's what that tells us
yeah,
is that it's never too late.
he said it's all
It's never
bullshit.
too
It's never too
late.
late. It's like,
Um,
right?
it's, I do think that's the moral of the story. Thank you very,
Yeah.
that good listening, good active
Thank you.
listening. I was really afraid I'm not gonna say that. I was really afraid that we were gonna have trouble listening to one another.
I
In
listen.
the same well, I have trouble listening to people. However, I will just say this. Yeah, to echo what you're saying, I think that ultimately, like, my entire journey
Yeah.
from the beginning of grad school to where I
Mhm.
am now has been full of mistakes,
Mhm.
detours,
Mhm.
um, just like the most circuitous routes even to get to where I am today, right?
Yes.
And maybe if you care about efficiency, you might wanna do it a different way.
Yeah.
However, like, I like the chaotic person that I am,
Mhm.
I don't think I've ever focused on efficiency because I knew I
Yeah.
was never good at it.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where trust a little bit that you will end up where you belong.
Yeah.
I would say that, I mean, I stuck with it.
Yeah.
I can only offer my own experience, but I stuck with it,
Mhm.
and ultimately I ended up where I wanted to be,
Yeah.
which, and I didn't follow, like, you're going to hear a million voices, right?
Mhm.
Between the internet and the people around you
Yeah.
on what you should or should not do.
Yeah.
And you can get anxious if you're doing something or taking an approach that's radically different from
Yeah.
what you're hearing about and what you're seeing.
Yeah.
But why be anxious?
Yeah.
That was always my philosophy. I
Yeah.
just was like, you know what? I
Yeah.
can't control this. I'm
Yeah.
doing this postdoc. I don't
Yeah.
think this postdoc is a bad opportunity.
No.
I had fun.
Yeah.
So ultimately, you gotta like trust yourself, trust
Yeah.
your instincts, trust your gut
Mhm.
too. Don't just be, if you're so worried about what everybody else is doing,
Yeah.
you're not focused on what you're doing.
It's true. It's really
That's the
true.
moral of the
Yeah.
story.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's it. Thank you for tuning in to our episode this week. We want to say thank you to all of the people who have been supporting us so far. We are really excited to continue working on this podcast together, and we really hope that we can have some audience participation, and you can tell us things that you want to hear about too. So please let us know in some way, shape, or form what you want to hear from us, and we will work it into our episodes.
Yeah, and you can do so either by commenting below our YouTube video or sending an email or a message to any of our social media accounts. We really, really appreciate the support that everybody's shown us thus far. I feel like, honestly, it's exceeded my expectations. I don't know about Nina's,
Yeah.
but it's definitely exceeded my expectations. I'm just happy that we get to share some of the stories that we have with
Mhm.
you all, and hopefully you'll stay tuned for more content soon.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Yeah.